So coming up this weekend is going to be UFC Fight Night Dolidze versus Imavov, and it is a card coming in after a little bit of a break. We had UFC 297, and now we've got this one after a 1 week break. And to be honest with you, this isn't going to be the best card in general. I mean, it is in the Apex. Most cards like this are in the Apex. There's nothing really on the card that stands out as like a massive event, as a massive fight. Don't get me wrong, the main and co-main event are fantastic matchups that I cannot wait for. There's a couple debuts on this card that I cannot wait for. But overall, as a UFC card as a whole, it definitely isn't the strongest card at all. And unfortunately, in my opinion, it's not going to be the best card to have a rebound from UFC 297, where I struggled a lot with my picks. My picks were absolutely terrible, and I do believe a lot of people out there as well also struggled a bit with UFC 297. All of the Canadian males lost. I feel like that might have ruined pretty much everyone. But who it didn't ruin was the team at We Want Picks. Both Angelo and Jacob were able to get a profit with their bets. Jacob's underdog lock of the week hit as well. And as well as that, you can get all of that for $10 per month, as well as all of your own tools, as well as a lot of other betting tools and other analysis from different people. I just wrote an article about all of the regional scene events that are going to be taking place this weekend, if you wanted to read that, as well as just like, I think it's like 4 YouTubers, aside from the team that We Want Picks, that give their articles, give their analysis. You can get all of that for $10 per month, or you can sign up using my code Artem over there for a 3-day free trial, and then after that it will be $10 per month, but you can cancel during that trial period if it just isn't what you wanted. And aside from that as well, I do have a couple of partnerships with sportsbooks. If you wanted to sign up to a couple of new sportsbooks, Bet Online and Bet US, I do have referral links there where you can get a deposit bonus. So now, let's get started with the first fight of the night. Thomas Petersen taking on Jamal Pogues. I have seen his name pronounced as Jamal Pogues before, so I do apologize if I'm saying his name incorrectly. But I do like Petersen in this matchup, and I like him quite a bit. Now, it is worth noting, though, that because I'm confident in Petersen, it doesn't mean that Pogues isn't a talented fighter, because I do think Pogues is really good. He used to fight at 205 pounds. He looked pretty good there. He did come in and win on Dana White's Contender Series at 205 pounds when he took on Marcus Brigagao. He didn't get the contract, and then he lost to Alex Polizzi, who went on to be in Bellator. And then he come back on the Contender Series. It looked like, no disrespect to Pogues, but it looked like he had just come off the couch. It looked like he had put on a lot of weight, which is why he's now fighting at the top of heavyweight. And he's had success, you know. He beat Paulo Renato Jr. in a kickboxing match for the most part. Come in, won his debut. But the problem with Pogues is he just doesn't do enough. He is a talented boxer. He just doesn't throw enough punches. And he's a talented wrestler that just doesn't shoot for enough takedowns. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Pogues just doesn't do anything. Thomas Petersen is a dominant wrestler. He come up with the LFA. I believe every single fight of his was with the LFA before the Contender Series. He had a very successful record there. The one loss was to Waldo Cortez Acosta, who hasn't looked amazing, but has still got like a really good winning record in the UFC. Has had some good performances in the UFC, so it's not really the worst loss to have at all. Petersen's striking defense is a big concern. Now, you might see people go out there and say that it's pretty good. It's okay. Like, I mean, he's just kind of stands there with his mouth open and he's walking forward, kind of plodding forward with his hands up. And he does manage to like move his head back from punches, but that's kind of it. He doesn't really have anything else. He just wants to take you down. He wants to dominate in the wrestling. I do think he can do that against Jamal Pogues. I think he wins a decision against Jamal Pogues. I think he just takes him down over and over and over again. Pogues just doesn't do enough. That's really what it does come down to. And now we can move on to a fight which I think a lot is going to go on. You know, we've got Marquel Mederos taking on Landon Quinones. This should be a banger. It will most likely be a striking matchup. I feel like if anyone is going to go for the takedowns, it would be Landon Quinones, which could be a pretty good reason to pick him, to be honest. But I am going to pick Marquel Mederos in this matchup. Marquel Mederos went out there and made me look like a right idiot because I picked Azat to beat him. And Mederos, I guess, defended the takedowns and just absolutely smoked him on the feet. And since then, you know, I've been very impressed with Mederos. I did pick him just because I thought Izakov was going to be a nightmare matchup for him with the takedowns. And maybe I'm seeing a lot of people feel that way potentially with Landon Quinones, as a lot of people are on the Quinones side. Quinones come in on short notice, upper weight class at 155, flew all the way to Australia to an event that I did actually watch live against Nasrat Hakparast, and put on a war. I don't know if it got the Fight of the Night award, but it definitely was one of the best fights of the night. From what I remember, a lot of volume was thrown in that fight. Now, Quinones, I believe, did go for some takedowns there, if I can recall the stats correctly, but he didn't get them. It was just a stand-up brawl. But what Quinones does like to do is try and get takedowns. He's going to mix in his striking with those takedowns against Mederos. I think Mederos' takedown defense is going to be good enough. And although Quinones is a good striker, I think Mederos is just better and more powerful. So I'm going to pick Marquel Mederos to win by decision, but if he knocks him out, I wouldn't be that surprised. Quinones could be a good underdog here. As I did say, a lot of people are picking Quinones, but I'm going to go with Mederos. Mederos is the pick. He looked good on the Contender Series. I do think Quinones is a solid fighter, but I like Mederos by decision. Maybe a finish. Julija Stoliarenko is going to be taking on Luana Carolina at 125 pounds. And it is worth noting to bring up just again, that weight cut could be tough for Stoliarenko. She did faint on the scales and fail to make weight in the past at 135, but she come in against Molly McCann, and all credit to Julija Stoliarenko. She looked like she had lost a lot of weight in like a good way, you know, like she completely, I guess, like almost like readjusted her body to not have as much weight to cut, and then also managed to cut the weight safely and successfully. Went in there at 125, potentially her job on the line, and submitted Molly McCann in round number 1. And if that's not a Molly McCann fight, and if that's not a Julija Stoliarenko fight, I don't know what is. That's what Julija Stoliarenko kind of needs to do in this fight again. Stoliarenko's cardio is not good, but her grappling is very, very good. She does have some left-way boxing experience, which I guess you could see come out in this matchup, but I do think if Stoliarenko's going to win, she needs to get the fight down to the ground, and she needs to be able to get a submission early because she will gas out. I'm going to pick Julija Stoliarenko. I wouldn't recommend putting too much money on this fight, but what I do recommend is if you are on the Stoliarenko side, bet on Stoliarenko to win in round number 1, because I feel like that's like the only way that she does win. I think that could be a pretty good prop. Or maybe even Luana Carolina to win by finish, because if Stoliarenko gasses out, Carolina could get a finish, and I'm sure Carolina by finish is probably crazy plus money right now. So if you really did want to bet on this fight, I feel like that is probably how you would do it. I'm picking Stoliarenko. I'm picking her to win by submission in round number 1. I feel like that's actually the only way she can win. So let's see how it goes. Good luck, Julija Stoliarenko. I do have a bit of faith in her, but we'll see. Blake Bilder is now taking on Jeong Lee. I am pretty confident in Jeong Lee. I think Jeong Lee's a really good fighter. Now, he is a counter striker, but he looks really, really good when he's actually the one coming forward, when he's the one throwing the punches, when he's the one starting the exchanges. And the thing about Blake Bilder is, I will say this though, before I do kind of talk down on him a little bit, his striking defense has improved so much. But it's still not that great, if that makes sense. Blake Bilder, before he come into Dana White's Contender Series, I picked him to lose against Alex Morgan, because if you look at his Cage Fury FC fights, this guy is getting dropped, he's getting hurt by lesser strikers than Alex Morgan. Alex Morgan is an incredible boxer, but he's just not been able to make it happen in MMA, unfortunately for him, but he's a really good striker. Bilder was actually able to dominate that fight and look really good. But the reason why I picked Alex Morgan in that fight was just because his striking defense was so bad coming into that matchup. And then he goes in there against Shane Young. The striking defense looks improved against Kyle Nelson. We'll probably skip over that fight, I guess. But Bilder didn't look good against Kyle Nelson. It looked like he wanted to counter-strike, even though he is a wrestler. For the most part, Bilder is a wrestler that decided he wanted to counter-strike with Kyle Nelson, which just didn't make sense. He kind of just ended up taunting Nelson and just getting beaten up in the pro. It was just a horrible performance. It was so stupid. And he walked out to Trippie Redd. Trippie Redd and DaBaby. What's that song? Death. He walked out to Death by Trippie Redd and DaBaby and then put on that performance. Come on, man. Jeong Lee, really talented guy, man. Like, he did go through a bit of a phase where he wasn't fighting at all. Submits Binji on, I believe, about 40 seconds. Knocks out Lu Kai in about a minute. And then has a pretty bad performance against Yijia where he did kind of just get caught waiting. and just waiting for an opportunity that never came. But I think he's going to be able to create that opportunity against Blake Bilder, and I think he's going to be able to knock out Blake Bilder. So that's the pick. I'm picking Jeong Lee to win by KO against Bilder, but if he does nothing, and these two just end up staring at each other, it's going to suck. I like Lee. It is also worth noting as well, if Bilder does get the fight down to the ground, Lee's grappling is really slick. We saw that on the road to UFC. We could see it again. And now we've got a fight. I've been fighting with myself on this pick, by the way. Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez. And I do want to say this. You might laugh. I'm really tempted to pick Pete Rodriguez because I don't think Themba Gorimbo's that good. I will go out there and say that. His striking is really not great. And Pete Rodriguez is a striker and he's a knockout artist. But I'm going to pick Themba Gorimbo. But I think it should tell you how confident I am in him, which is not very. The fact that I want to pick Pete Rodriguez, of all people. Themba Gorimbo is a wrestler grappler, and you can trust him to be the wrestler grappler that he is, because that's all he does. He wants to take you down, and he wants to grapple. That's what he did against Takashi Sato to win the decision. He ended up getting reversed by AJ Fletcher, and then submitted. But the point is, that's what Gorimbo wants to do. In the very short periods of time that the fights that he's in end up being on the feet, he looks really sloppy. He leaves himself incredibly open. I actually don't know how he does this, but he somehow manages to, like, never move his head at all. Like, he'll be doing, he'll throw something. Like, oh, I punched my mic, sorry. Like, he'll throw something, but his head will just stay on the center line. Like, he's not really, like, following through or anything. Just his head stays, and he'll throw a head kick, and his head's, like, in the middle. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but I did have an amateur boxing fight at the end of last year. And, like, head movement is something that is taught relatively early on. Like, not super early on, because, like, you know, there's a lot of other basics. But, like, it just got none. He's got none of it. I don't know how. And obviously, he'll be wrestling with Colby Covington, so his wrestling will be getting better. Pete Rodriguez could knock him out. I could really see Pete Rodriguez knocking out Themba Gorimbo. I know it's Mike Jackson, but he looked pretty good on the feet against Mike Jackson, but that doesn't really count. He looked really bad against JDM, but JDM's really good, and that was short notice, to be honest. I've never seen Pete Rodriguez have to defend a real takedown. The only takedown I've seen Pete Rodriguez have to defend was a really sloppy Mike Jackson takedown. And that's it. And that's why I can't pick him, because there's no evidence out there that suggests to me that Pete Rodriguez's takedown defense is going to be enough to be able to keep this fight on the feet for a long enough period of time where he can go out there and just knock out Themba Gorimbo. But I do want you guys to know, if you were paying minus 300 for Themba Gorimbo, you have been scammed. He is not a minus 300 in this matchup. Pete Rodriguez, if you are going to bet the fight, I actually feel like the betting side would probably be Pete Rodriguez. He's like plus 200 at the moment. That's good odds for Pete Rodriguez in this matchup. I think Themba Gorimbo is not good. I think Pete Rodriguez isn't that great, but his striking so bad. Rodriguez could knock him out. I'm going to pick Themba Gorimbo to win, though. I'm going to actually pick Gorimbo to win by submission. I have absolutely no idea what Rodriguez grappling looks like at all. So now let's move on to the next fight. Charles Johnson taking on Azat Maksum. And it's just another favorite that's pretty big. Minus 190 on Tapology. Azat Maksum, that I'm not that confident in. Charles Johnson does have good takedown defense. Now, I'm seeing a lot of people in my comments saying that he's been taken down all the time in his last fight. I know, but his takedown defense is good. And if he does get taken down, he's got a really good ability to get back up. And his Muay Thai striking is incredibly impressive. This is a guy that won a scholarship to Tiger Muay Thai by winning a Muay Thai tournament. His kickboxing, his Muay Thai is solid. His wrestling is solid. He's a good fighter. He's a better fighter than the 13-6 record suggests. And I believe all of these losses, if not all, most of them, are due to just short notice matchups. Now, I guess you could say his fight against Rafael Estevam wasn't short notice, because it wasn't. And it wasn't a good performance by Charles Johnson, sorry. I am picking Azat Maksum. He took on in a mostly striking matchup against Tyson Nam and was able to take down Tyson Nam. It's worth noting that I'm like, yes, this is true. Azat Maksum in the UFC was the first person to take down Tyson Nam. Nobody in the UFC that Tyson Nam has fought has been able to take him down, and he's fought some good guys. Azat Maksum was able to get him down. I think he will be able to get down Charles Johnson, but I don't think he will be able to hold him down. But I think he will be able to move forward. His striking, although, you know, there was a very close fight with Nam, looked pretty good. Maksum also has a lot of experience as well. Like, you see that 17-0 record, it's not super padded. Some of those fights earlier on in his career, yeah, he didn't fight the best guys, but he's fought a brawler in Nunes. He's fought a grappler. He's fought kickboxers in the past. He's a good fighter. I'm a believer in Maksum. Now, I do believe Asu Almabayev might be the better Kazakhstan flyweight prospect, but let me know if you agree in the comments. I'm going to pick Maksum. I'm going to pick him to win by decision. I think he does get past Charles Johnson in this matchup. Now we've got Molly McCann taking on Diana Belbita. This is a rematch. Minus 250 for Molly McCann. Oh, man. I want you guys to know this is a very low confidence pick. Incredibly low confidence pick. I'm going to pick Molly McCann. But, man, I just don't know. I just don't know. She's going to be coming down to 115 pounds. I think this is a return to 115 pounds. And I believe she fought Diana Belbita at 115 pounds originally. That was Diana Belbita's debut, if I'm not mistaken. McCann was a massive favorite. She won the decision pretty dominantly on the scorecards, but there are some people out there that think that Belbita may have been able to win a couple rounds. I think there's like a 10-7 rounds in there because of point deduction. And then McCann got a 10-8 rounds, even though probably shouldn't have been a 10-8. But anyway, the way that McCann managed to win that fight is a style of fight that she just doesn't use anymore. McCann went from being a boxer wrestler to only a boxer to whatever it is she is now. Because at the moment, I don't know what McCann's like identity as a fighter is, because I could tell you that she's a boxer wrestler, but she doesn't really go for takedowns anymore, really. And then she went through that phase where she was winning by wicked spinning elbows. But then she got exposed by Blanchfield, but that's Erin Blanchfield. I don't take anything away from her for that. But the loss to Julija Stoliarenko is inexcusable. She was in the armbar, and then she like rolled to make it more in the armbar. If you guys don't know what I mean, just watch the fight. It doesn't last that very. Oh, what is McCann doing, man? I think she beats Belbita though. Belbita's takedown defense is less than 50%, if I'm not mistaken. She's a really good long-range kickboxer. Her grappling isn't that great, even though I'm pretty sure she's got a lot of wins by submission. She does. 4 wins by submission. 4 losses by submission, though. I'm going to pick Molly McCann by decision. I feel like now she's decided that she doesn't want to fight in a crowd for her next fight. She wants to get back in the win column. She wants to beat Diana Belbita in the Apex, and then with more confidence, she can then go back in front of her London crowd with Paddy Pimblett on the card and maybe like an Arnold Allen headliner. I don't even know. Leon Edwards headliner probably. But anyway, McCann is the pick. I think she gets it done by using her wrestling and taking down Diana Belbita. And now we've got Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radtke, and I could not tell you why this fight is so high up on the prelims. This could be and should be the opening fight, but it is what it is. Urbina is taking on Radtke. Radtke's interesting to me because he was brought in on relatively short notice, you know, when they were kind of just putting together the UFC 293 card. They slapped together a few matchups with about 3 weeks prior to the event because they just didn't do enough matchmaking, I guess. He took on Blood Diamond, and although he was a minus 330 favorite, I saw some people saying that he was brought in to lose to Blood Diamond, but I said this in my breakdown for the fight. Radtke wasn't brought in to lose to Blood Diamond because he is a stylistic nightmare matchup for Blood Diamond because he is a wrestler and not a lot else. That's kind of all he does is just wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. He's a good grappler. He was coming off a really good win over Raheem Forrest. And then he took on Blood Diamond. And then he said all that to the crowd. And I guess maybe the UFC is like, you know what? That's enough for us to put him this high up on the prelims. He's going to lose to Gilbert Urbina. I'm pretty confident Urbina should be good enough, but Urbina's not that great himself. He just looked really good in his last fight against Kosuke, was able to keep it on the feet, knocked him out to the body. Really good performance from him. I think he's going to be able to get Radtke here. He should be able to defend the takedowns. Radtke isn't going to have that much on the feet for him, so give me Urbina by KO, but man, I just don't care about that fight, to be honest. It's just it's a very, very low in the ranks welterweight fight. It should be the opening prelim. I mean, why is Marquel Mederos versus Quinones in that same spot? You know, it's a similar situation. Anyway, Aliaskhab Khizriev versus Muradov. I believe this is now... Wait, Urbina versus Radtke's on the main card. Okay, anyway, Khizriev versus Muradov is the next fight on the card. It's on the main card, obviously. I'm going to pick Khizriev. I'm relatively confident in Khizriev because I think it's a good stylistic matchup for him. But there's going to be people on YouTube, I'm not going to say who, but there will be people on YouTube that will be picking Muradov, and I can completely understand why they might want to be on that side. Muradov has looked like he's made improvements despite losing to Kaya Baralho, and then he beat Brian Barberena is terrible. But anyway, he looked good against Kyle Baralho despite the loss. It looked like he had improved after the GM3 matchup, which he just folded under the pressure. That's kind of what happened. And I'm kind of banking on that same thing happening in this one here, because Aliaskhab Khizriev, he's a... I'll just say it, whatever. He's a short, fat middleweight that's going to want to wrestle. And I think he is going to be able to get the wrestling off on Muradov. I think the pressure will eventually turn Muradov down, and I think he will be able to get the takedowns and use his grappling. This is Khizriev I'm talking about, because he's a really good grappler. But man, this guy just doesn't fight. Like, what is he doing? He's had 5 cancelled fights in the last 3 years. He fought Dennis Tiulin, and Dennis Tiulin, man, I love Dennis Tiulin. Please don't cut him UFC if you haven't already. Just keep him around, man. I love Dennis Tiulin. He's like that one random fighter on the roster that you love, and I love Dennis. But anyway, he's had 5 cancelled fights since 2020. One of those was a short notice win over Tiulin. And now he's taken on Muradov, which is a massive step up in competition, even from the guys he was fighting before he ended up on the Contender Series, because this is the most tough fighter of his career. Most of his wins are in the first round. He's got a bigger gut than that photo, and we're just trying to see what happens. But I'm going to pick Khizriev. I think stylistically it's a bad matchup for Muradov. Khizriev is going to need to get the takedowns, though. Muradov has crazy KO power. I believe at one point he was on like a 14-fight KO win streak, which is nuts. And Khizriev's striking defense isn't that great. He's a fat middleweight with a bowl cut, and yeah, I think he gets the wrestling going though. I do think he out grapples Muradov. I'm picking Khizriev by submission, but I don't know. My hype on Khizriev's kind of died off. Like, what is this guy doing? He's just not fighting like at all. Anyway, now we've got Viviane Araujo taking on Natalia. Sorry, I've never really been that disrespectful to a fighter before, but Khizriev just annoyed me, man, because he's got all of the talent in the world. He truly does. Aliaskhab Khizriev has all the talent in the world, but he's fought twice in the last 3 years. What is going on with Khizriev? It's just kind of amazing to me. But anyway, now we've got Viviane Araujo taking on Natalia Silva. And speaking of someone that has all the talent in the world, Natalia Silva is a really good fighter, man. She has a incredible kickboxing ability. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but she's really good at kickboxing, and she just completely dominated Andrea Lee, who is a former ranked fighter, who was ranked for a long time, who has really good wins. And Silva just kind of went out there and beat her at her own game. Lee just couldn't get anything going. Silva was constantly throwing feints, not only just kind of throwing the feints with her hands, but also with her hips as well, because she twists her hips a lot as if she's going to be throwing a kick, and I guess just opponents just can't figure her out. She's very high volume, doesn't have the most amount of power in the world, but we have seen her get a finish at the UFC level. Really high volume fighter, good takedown defense as we have seen in the past, and she's taking on Araujo, who at the age of 37 years old, Viviane Araujo is slowing signs of slowing down. I know she just beat Jennifer Maia, but Maia's not the youngest fighter in the world either. She lost to Rivas. She lost to Grasso in a fight where she was slowing down, but that was a 5-round fight, and now Grasso's the champion, so I can't take too much away from her. But the point is, Silva will be faster. Silva will be throwing more volume. I think Silva keeps it on the feet as well, because Araujo's not really that much of a grappler. So I think Silva gets it done, and I'm going to pick Silva to win by decision in impressive fashion by just landing and throwing a lot of volume. And now we've got Randy Brown taking on Muslim Selikov. I'm picking Randy Brown. I mean, it's a relatively low confidence pick though, because I do think Muslim Selikov's a really good fighter. He's just getting older and he's getting slower, and that's really it. I don't really know what else to say. Selikov is getting older and he's getting slower. If you guys don't know who Muslim Selikov is, he's a really talented kickboxer with a kung fu background, which is why he's called the King of Kung Fu. And he just lost to Nicholas Dalby, which isn't the worst loss because Dalby just went out there and beat Bonfim. But before that, he beat Andre Fialho, which hasn't aged well. I mean, Fialho was on a big slide. He got knocked out by the Leech, Li Jingliang, which I did pick to happen. And he can wrestle. Muslim Salikov can wrestle, but I think Randy Brown should be able to keep the fight on the feet. I don't expect this to be the greatest fight in the world. Both guys don't really throw the most amount of volume. I just think it's going to be Randy Brown keeping Muslim Salikov at the end of his punches, at the end of his kicks, because he's just got really, this is going to sound weird, but he's got really long range. As in, Randy Brown's got a long reach in his arms, and he's got really long legs. Now, I guess you could say Salikov could be kicking those legs like everybody does to Randy Brown, but I think Brown's just going to kind of keep him at the end of his strikes and be able to just win a decision that way. Brown looked pretty good in the striking and grappling against Turman, but I do still maintain that I don't think that was the best performance we have seen from Brown, because Turman just didn't look that good in his next fight at 170 pounds, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Brown's kind of one of those guys who I guess has been like the 16th ranked fighter in the welterweight division for a long time. I think he defends that. Maybe with a win over Salikov, he gets a guy that's gonna put him in the top 15. We'll see. I'm gonna pick Randy Brown by decision though. And now we can move on to a banger. This is the fight, man. This is the fight you watch the whole card to see. Obviously, the main event's going to be good too. But Renato Moicano taking on Drew Dober. You know this is going to be a good fight. I wish it was in front of a crowd. But this is going to be good. I mean, Renato Moicano deserves to be put in front of a crowd. I love his post-fight interviews. But I will say this. I don't think we get a post-fight interview from Renato Moicano. I'm pretty confident I've only picked favorites up until this point, but I think like a couple of the fighters are pick'ems. Drew Dober is my first underdog of the card. I think he knocks out Renato Moicano, and a big reason is, I know Drew Dober, people are saying that Drew Dober's chin is done after he got KO'd by Frivola. I do maintain that that was a relatively early stoppage. Now, people hate me saying this, but you watch the replay of Matt Frivola knocking out knocking out Drew Dober. None of those ground and pound strikes land that Matt Frivola's throwing at Drew Dober. Literally none of them land. I mean, I think one or two do out of 10 that Frivola threw. But anyway, that's just me coping. But it is true. Watch the replay. But Drew Dober bounced back with a very, that was a gimme to Ricky Glenn. Let's be honest. That was a gimme win. Knocks out Ricky Glenn easily. Now he's taking on Renato Moicano. I don't think Drew Dober's going to respect Renato Moicano on the feet. Renato Moicano's got no KO wins. He does use his striking to set up his grappling, which is what you like to see. He does have one knockdown. Since 2018, he has one knockdown in about 5 years, which isn't as impressive as I thought it was going to sound coming out of my mouth, but he is a really good grappler. His takedowns are pretty good, and Drew Dober's takedown defense on paper isn't great. Oh, I just kicked my mic again. I'm sorry, guys. Drew Dober's takedown defense on paper isn't good because it's 56%, but I think it's going to be good enough to defend the takedowns against Renato Moicano. Keep it on the feet where Drew Dober's going to be most comfortable. Even then, Drew Dober can wrestle. He's not that great at wrestling, but he can wrestle. I think he's going to be able to knock out Renato Moicano, who is tough. We saw a lot of toughness when he took on Rafael dos Anjos, but ultimately he's still been KO'd a few times. I think Drew Dober can knock him out, so I'm going to pick the Dobska. I don't even know if people call him that. I'm going to pick Drew Dober. Anyway, I'm picking Drew Dober. Let's move on to the main event. Roman Dolidze taking on Nassourdine Imavov. I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov here, which is interesting because I'm seeing a lot of conflicting takes out there online for sure. I'm seeing a lot of people picking Roman Dolidze because they think that Nassourdine Imavov is going to gas out and Dolidze is going to be able to take over. That's really funny because you know why I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov? Because I think Roman Dolidze is going to gas out and Imavov's going to be able to take over. I know that we've seen Imavov slow down in the past in fights that have been high paced, with fights that haven't really gone his way. But I'm just not sold that Dolidze can keep up the pace that he puts on 4-5 rounds. Now, don't get me wrong. He has had some incredible performances recently. On short notice, he went out there and just looked really good against Jack Hermansson. He went out there against Marvin Vettori, who's going to be a tough fighter. And a lot of people do believe that he beat Marvin Vettori. But my takeaway from that fight was Marvin Vettori just has no answer to. Marvin Vettori cannot make adjustments in fight at all, especially when it's something as basic as a right hand. Because if you watch that fight against Dolidze, all Roman Dolidze is throwing against Marvin Vettori is overhand rights. That's literally it. I believe he throws 13 overhand rights in a row at one point before throwing another strike. And Marvin Vettori makes no adjustment whatsoever in the middle of the fight. How is Marvin Vettori in the top 5? Anyway, that's not even the point. The point is Roman Dolidze, his striking's okay. It's good. He's powerful. It's not that technical. He loves to throw that overhand right. Imavov's striking is okay. I think... Oh, I've got to sneeze. Hold on. Whew, managed to mute the mic in time. This video is an absolute nightmare. I apologize. I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov. I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov by decision. He can wrestle. I would potentially even advise against doing that just because Dolidze is such a good grappler. I believe he's like a European champion in grappling multiple times. And also on the feet, Dolidze I think is a little bit one-dimensional. Very powerful, but I think a little bit one-dimensional. If Imavov is able to defend the takedowns from Dolidze, I think Imavov can throw more volume, and I think he can do it for longer. I think Imavov out of the two is the fighter that's more likely to last all 5 rounds, which is why I'm going to Imavov. But there are some people out there picking Dolidze because they think Imavov is going to gas out. So if you think that's going to happen, let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'll see you guys. Okay, Dolidze is picked. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm picking Imavov. He is the favorite, but yeah, he's the underdog on Tapology picks, quote unquote underdog. Let me know what you think in the comments. I apologize that the video just become a bit of a mess towards the end there. I just had a disc golf tournament, and I got 6th, which is okay. At one point, I was sitting in 2nd, but it all fell apart. Actually, hold on. If you give me 1 second, Artem Book Club. Give me 1 moment. I'm gonna go and grab the book, which I just finished reading. Hold on. That was the wrong button. I'm a bit of an idiot. Alright, back. 2 nights ago, I finished reading Children of Dune, which is the 3rd book in the Dune series, I guess, written by Frank Herbert. I'm now going to be moving on to the 4th, 5th, and 6th books. Children of Dune is good. In my opinion, it's not great. It's not as good as the 1st or the 2nd book. The 1st book, I think, is my favorite out of the 3 so far, but the 2nd book, my goodness, is it good. But to read the 2nd book, you've got to read the 1st. So yeah, I recommend Dune by Frank. I mean, I might start a YouTube channel. I just keep bringing up these books that I'm reading. But anyway, Children of Dune, it was a good book. A lot of people have recommended me to stop reading the series after the 3rd book. So I'll let you know what I think of those books when I finish them. Apparently the 4th book is a masterpiece, but maybe the 5th and 6th aren't so good. I'll let you know what you think when I get there. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one.